Welcome to the Pop Tower Podcast with your host, the man behind the myth, Peter Dawson, and the Soulful Lordy, James Bullock.
Yes, it's episode 60. And, you know, I can hear the clock tick. And I'm getting caught up in circles. Because episode 60, well, there's 60 seconds in a minute. And I can't help but flash back to warm nights, time after time. Just to be clear what I was quoting there. Purposely leaving out some lines so we don't get a copyright strike. I figure our fans in Brazil in particular would appreciate that.
Yes.
So I am indeed Peter W. Dawson.
And I am James Bullock.
And we're here to talk about video games, television, and movies.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm just going to keep calling it TV now. I'm tired of saying streaming.
Oh, yeah. No, we're just saying TV. That's fine.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about, first up, a franchise that I wouldn't say is near and dear to my heart. Well, it's complicated, because I'm not the biggest fan of these games in general.
Same here.
But its spin-off is one of my favorites of the genre.
Couldn't agree with you
I have
more.
a lot of... Yeah, so I'm also kind of ecstatic that the... pardon me. That this game builds on that spin-off.
Mm-hmm. Which I was actually very surprised about, because I knew it meant a lot to the Borderlands lore, but I just assumed, like, you know, since it was a spin-off, they wouldn't even bother to talk about it.
But, yeah, so Borderlands 3, which is the long-awaited sequel to Borderlands 2. Like, when did Borderlands 2 come out? Was that 2011?
No.
12.
12. Oh,
2012.
I thought it was 11. No, you're right, it's 12. But we've also had...
I'm probably thinking of the pre-sequel.
I was about to say, we had the pre-sequel too, but of course, nobody really cared too much about that, outside of the fact that Handsome Jack's origin story was a part of it. But, like, other than that, nobody really praises the pre-sequel.
Well, I think they also like the fact that you can play as Athena and stuff like that.
That's true.
But, yeah, so in this case, it follows the main premise of the Borderlands games, which is there are vault hunters who've come to the planet Pandora to find these mysterious vaults, which supposedly contain vast, great treasures.
That was a vault hunter right there.
Yeah. It's also a weird mix of genuine drama and heavy comedy.
Yes.
Like, there's some genuinely shocking and dramatic moments in these games, and some genuinely creepy moments too. But it's just so heavily comedy and, like, almost fourth wall breaking. It's bizarre. And honestly, that part works. That is one thing I do enjoy about the franchise.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed that.
Which is why I really like Tales from the Borderlands, because that really put those storytelling elements on focus.
Right, that was definitely in the forefront. For those who don't know, Tales from the Borderlands was a Telltale Games spin-off of the series that, of course, was more choose your own adventure, more so than loot 'em, shoot 'em that this game is.
Yeah, and it had, like I said, it had a lot of, like, that was probably one of my favorite Telltale games. Like, it's obviously Walking Dead is usually the go-to, and then I got a lot of affection for the Batman one, and then some of the other ones too.
Right.
But I think this one, more so than the other ones, helped emphasize, like, because you had a better chance to get the last word in, which is always something I hated about Telltale games, is, like, you would say something, and then the NPC would always get the last word. Which is something that's been popping up, especially in BioWare games quite a bit lately as well. Like, that was really glaring in Dragon Age 2.
Right.
Off the top of my head. Knights of the Old Republic has that problem quite a bit as well. So, like, meanwhile, Borderlands 3, the last word is usually your bullet.
Right.
Just to bring it back to what we're actually talking about.
Yeah.
And, yeah, like, it follows a slightly different premise this time, because you're vault hunters still. Like, there's 4 new ones. Amara, is it Mose?
Yeah, Mose, yeah.
I'm not sure how all these are, because I haven't played nearly as much as you have. Zane and, okay, is it Flack?
It's good old Flack. That's my boy. I'm playing right now as Flack.
Yeah, you will not be surprised to learn I started with Zane.
Okay, I know a lot of people have credited Zane as, like, the go-to right now.
Yeah, there's always one character that's, like, the go-to. And for me, it's usually characters like Zane. And the last one I actually played as Zero quite a bit.
Yeah, I was about to say, one of the biggest ones was Zero in the last game that I think a lot of people played as.
Yeah. And, in this case, but they're not so much, they're still Vault Hunters to a degree, but they've specifically joined the Crimson, or are trying to join anyway, the Crimson Raiders.
Right, exactly.
Which are kind of like a mercenary group, Vault Hunter crew, that have their origins with, was it Roland?
Yeah, it was Roland from the first game, who once again, that was my main guy in the first game, yeah.
Yeah, he's pretty popular in that respect as well, because I think Mordecai and Brick are a little more weird, and then...
Right. Freaking Roland had the turrets that you could set down, and a nice little shield that you could pop up at any time that I thought was absolutely awesome, so that's why I loved Roland.
Yeah, like, because that's kind of the cool thing is, like, well, the first game had a handful of supporting characters, there weren't really too many.
Right.
And then starting with Borderlands 2, they not only brought back a bunch of characters, but they...
added some.
Yeah, they added some really memorable ones, too, and then Tales of the Borderlands, and even the pre-sequel to a degree, built up on them as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's nice to see them, like, all the old protagonists, the ones that are still alive anyway, I'm not going to spoil exactly what happened there, but yes, some people are dead. Yeah, they're trying to deal with stuff, but the problem is, there's other people who really want stuff too.
Right.
Off the top of my head, like, aren't the main villains for at least a good chunk of the story the Calypso twins?
The Calypso twins, yes, they are first introduced pretty early, I think like the second mission, as not only Vault Hunters, but they are now like the leaders of this new religion called the Children of the Vault. So they have like pretty much all the mad crazies that we've experienced on Pandora for all these games now following them and doing whatever they tell them to do. And the way they're presented is almost as if they are streamers. So they like tell people after they do these things, like, subscribe, and obey. So it's this whole trying to inside deal, like, hey, you're a gamer that more than likely is streaming this game, being presented with villainous streamers.
Yeah. That is kind of a cute, like I said, this series is a cute meta commentary thing, and the Calypso twins in that respect they're pretty decent villains.
Yeah, they are not like Handsome Jack in the sense that Handsome Jack was ruthless and brutal, but he would do things that would make you smile and actually think, man, if he just wasn't so evil, I could hang out with him.
Especially because his taunting was actually hilarious.
Right. Whereas with the Calypso twins, these two people are sick. Like, they come across as just incredibly insane to the point that you have to put them down.
Yeah. It's really kind of the sad thing. And then, in this case, like, pretty much everyone's back, because what is it? Claptrap, Zero, Maya, Brick, Mordecai.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm forgetting someone. But, like, they're all back. Aurelia, Hamlock, Tiny Tina.
Yeah.
Now just Tina.
Yeah.
Which is fair enough. Mad Moxie.
Ellie.
I'm trying to think. Yeah. Athena doesn't show up, though, right?
No. And for good reason, I believe.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, it took me a few.
Yeah, no, but like I said, pretty much everybody that's a part of the Borderlands universe that has become ingrained in that lore shows up again, and majority of them are really hilarious, but then we also have on the opposite end of the spectrum, like you were saying, just kind of like that fourth wall breaking moments, is the villains and the bosses. And once again, they come with the best comedy when they come with the introductions. They always have this still shot of the name, the picture of the enemy that you're about to take on, which is the boss, and some kind of caption. And just for early spoiler, the first boss you face is pretty much a mutated, regular raider kind of freakish guy with a big hammer and a knife. It's called Shiv. And I love the caption they put on. He brings a knife to a gunfight.
Yeah, they're always really good with the humor in that respect as well, which I do appreciate. And it's kind of interesting just to see, like, because in the first game, the Atlas Corporation was kind of a big deal.
Right.
And then the second game had to jack it up with Hyperion, and they kind of became the big deal. And now there's this resurgence of Atlas again.
Mm-hmm.
So they have this interesting continuity with the elements they do bring back. And so, like the narrative structure of the game is pretty good.
Yeah, it was amazing because I actually, compared to, like, especially with Borderlands 1, there was pretty much no story to a certain extent.
No, there's basically nothing.
No. And Borderlands 2 gets a little bit better, but really the driving force is just the confrontation between you and Handsome Jack. Like, really, the story beats are not that important. Whereas with this, I'm actually intrigued as I play through each mission. I'm actually wanting to go through the missions more, just to see how the story plays out, compared to the other games. But the one thing I have to do, one thing that I do when it goes back to gameplay, that I still think hurts the game overall, the overall flow, is that necessity for grinding. There's still that enemy leveling system that sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Depending on what boss you face, they might actually up the levels a little bit in correlation to what you have. And then other ones pretty much stay the same no matter where you go. If you level up to level, 25, they will still be level 12. But there's still that necessity to grind sometimes to advance the story, because you have to take on enemies, and no matter what kind of weaponry you have, no matter what kind of armor or shields you have, you're going to get obliterated no matter what.
I mean, part of the problem I noticed too was like the AI is still that. It kind of had this problem before, but I swear to God it's worse than this one so far because it hasn't been patched yet. The AI still feels really kind of erratic.
Oh, very much so. Like, there's one key feature, which is a second wind. So if you get knocked down, you have a finite amount of time to shoot or kill an enemy, and you'll get a second wind and you'll jump back into the game. There are times when you're trying to find, like, that one enemy that you can shoot to kill, and they will be just darting all around you. You will have no chance to find them before it's game over, and of course you have to respawn, and that costs money. And that's one of the biggest things I know. It's always been a thing about Borderlands. Hey, they penalize you for dying in one way or another. One of the biggest penalizations is the fact you do lose money if you die and have to respawn. Now, of course, if you have like little money, they don't tax you to the point that you have no money left. But it goes down quickly. Like the other day, I just happened to take on two badass rocket launchers showed up. Like, I don't understand where they came from, and just kept obliterating me in one section. And I went from like $14,000 to $5,000 in no time flat.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's just something that just happens. Like I said, just the whole correlation with grinding and everything else. But
yeah,
what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say just some enemies as well. Like they're just constantly, they've just got ridiculous health bars.
Oh yeah.
Like what's the term? Bullet sponge?
Yeah. Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. And it's not like that's one big problem I think that they've changed in the last couple of Borderlands games. I hate to sound so negative about the gameplay because it's one of the things I love the most about it. Like, it will keep me awake, it'll keep me going the whole time. But there are definitely still flaws in the gameplay setup that they have. But one of the things in like the original Borderlands was the fact that you got more chances to get like an epic weapon drop or more money drop if you landed a headshot or something. Like, that would be a one-hit kill in Borderlands 1. Whereas you can shoot a guy over and over in the head in Borderlands 2 or 3, and it'll just cause a critical. It won't cause a headshot, one-hit kill. And it just keeps going and going and going, and you will run through ammo so quickly. Thankfully, there's a lot of replenishment areas, a lot of crates and everything stashed around the battle arenas. But sometimes in the heat of battle, when you're trying to find something, it's kind of hard to do when you're being shot at so much.
Yeah. It's a classic problem.
Yeah.
I do appreciate that, despite the fact that this has been exclusive to the Epic Store for 6 months on PC, that it hasn't done too many money-grubbing elements that you would totally expect from a game. Like, especially, like, you could see this game offering to sell you loot drops.
This actually is a system that is made for that. And thankfully, they do not take advantage of it.
I know. Like, we're kind of praising them for not being money grubbers.
Not being scummy.
So I want to be clear, this is very much faint praise that shouldn't be the norm, but just because how badly we've seen monetization ruin what games that could have otherwise been amazing.
I would say very promising games.
Like, Ubisoft games in general are really getting dragged downhill lately by it.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Ever since, I want to say, Assassin's Creed Unity was probably the most glaring example.
Yeah, I was about to say, pretty much the start of this generation when Syndicate and Unity came out. Like, those are the first ones, and then it bled into, I know it was a big deal with Watch Dogs 2 was another one that was a really just itemized idea, monetized situation. And recently, like, Far Cry New Dawn is ridiculous.
And apparently it's even worse now with the new Ghost Recon.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that.
Did you hear about that?
Yes. Oh, that
time
looks so
savers.
bad. That looks so bad.
Hey, you want to pay to not play this game you bought because we made it a slog to play?
Right.
I mean, I'm sorry to get potentially political here with games, but I mean, that's such an insane thing. And, like, again, I'm just saying, it's nice that Borderlands isn't doing that, and they're doing stuff like they've got the Borderlands anniversary event, because it's now a 10-year-old franchise.
Yeah, which is amazing. I was looking back on the, just looking back on the history of it, I forgot that it came out in 2009.
Yeah. So they've already got, like, there's special loot drops and stuff already, as well as special challenges, which I do appreciate. I don't know about you. I think we don't have much else to say.
No. The only thing I'll just say one thing in terms of gameplay, I do enjoy that certain weapons now have an option of, like, 2 different phases. You can have, like you can switch between 2 different options when it comes to certain guns. Like, one thing that I always loved was the elementals in the previous games. Well, in this game, certain guns might have 2 different elementals that you can switch between in the heat of battle, which I think is awesome. So, like, that's one great implementation, I think, that just makes it a lot more fun and a lot more, like, you have to really be on your toes to figure out what will work best against a certain enemy. But it's Borderlands through and through. That's the thing. It does not lose that Borderlands feel both as a game and as a story, and especially when it comes to humor.
Yeah, like, probably the most glaring thing, like I said, that's kind of disadvantage is because this one's still fairly new, it has the flaws that the other ones didn't launch, and I mean, some of the ones that never really went away, let's be honest.
Right.
But if you've liked the previous games, you will absolutely like this one, and if you've always wanted to see them do more stuff narratively, this will definitely be in a chance to do that. And, like, I don't think it's as, succinct as it was with Tales of the Borderlands, but I mean, you can't because of the different nature of the game.
Right, it's 2 different genres.
Yeah, like, yes, I don't, like, gun in my head, I wouldn't say it was as good as writing his Tales, but I mean, they've got different limitations and everything to worry about. So I could totally forgive that. I mean, if they managed to somehow make it on par, I would be all the more impressed. But as it stands, I'm like, it is what it is.
No, like I said, I think they do a very good job of presenting the lore now and actually having a coherent story. Whereas, of course, like I said, Borderlands 1, the most rewarding thing was the gameplay itself. Whereas now, I'm actually feeling like, man, I'm actually enjoying the story. Plus, of course, the gameplay is absolutely phenomenal. So, like I said, minor flaws, definitely, that's still there from previous games. And, of course, stuff that will be hopefully patched. But overall, like I said, Borderlands through and through, and I've thoroughly enjoyed what I played thus far. I wish I just had more time. I haven't had as much time with it as I wanted to, but it's been really fun anytime I do play it.
Yeah, no, I'd say check it out if you're, like I said, if you're even remotely afraid of this franchise. If you didn't like the first few, though, you're probably not going to like this one.
Oh, my goodness, if you didn't like 1 or 2, you would not like this.
Yeah, like, that's really what it is. It's more of the same for all the good, and mostly good that is.
Right.
That entails, but I mean, so you want to move on to TV?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So, a while back we talked, when did that first part come out? Was that like a year ago?
That was a year ago. It was like last summer.
Oh yeah, August 2018.
Yeah, I remember it was I know it was in August. I thought it was last summer, so yeah. Man, I did not realize it had been that long.
Yeah, so in this case we're going to talk about Disenchantment, Part 2, which is on Netflix. This is Matt Groening's still relatively new animated show.
Yeah. This is confused so many people because everyone thinks it's season 2. It's not season 2. It's actually season 1, part 2.
Yeah, for some reason they split it up, and I guess because they didn't want to drop 20 episodes on the people at once.
That's understandable.
Yeah,
they could have done it a little bit quicker though.
And yeah, like I had to go back and rewatch a few things to remind myself.
Yeah, same here.
Because one of my biggest problems with the series still remains. I might as well remind people. I did not very much care for Bean's voice actress.
Yes, yeah, it's still there.
And I never really liked that she was called Bean because I thought that was not a great name.
Yeah, so her name is Princess Tia Beanie, but everyone calls her Bean. It's not like a majority of the some people in the actual castle call her Princess, but a majority of everyone, even in just regular civilization, call her Bean because of course she's introducing herself as Bean.
I know, and it still tears me out of it every single time. Like, even when frickin' Zog, especially when Zog says it.
Yeah, I mean, when he says it, it sounds like more of like a cute nickname. Like, nobody else should be calling her this. But
no, honestly, even when he says it, it feels just like, I don't know. It's just, this has been like a problem with me and it may seem petty, and it kind of is.
I know, it's a terrible name.
like, Elfo's fine.
Yeah, because it makes sense. Like, it's supposed to be, like, so ridiculous. Of course, elves would be named Elfo. Like, an elf would be named Elf. Like, it just makes sense. And I think a majority of the names make sense. Except for Prince Derek. That's just so normalized.
I know. I think that's intentional, too,
yeah,
though.
No, because he's so odd. Like, I get it. I definitely get it.
To spoil what happened at the end of the last season slightly, just because that is kind of the launching point for this.
Right.
It turns out Dagmar, the as Zog hilariously pointed out at the end of last season, his ex-wife. What did he call her? The most heinous evil that has ever been unleashed in the kingdom.
Yes!
My ex-wife. Which, shout out to John DiMaggio again. He is so good at delivering.
He is great. There's one episode, I believe it's the 4th episode of part 2, that's pretty much all about him. Yeah. It is such a great... To me, it's probably the strongest episode of the whole season.
Oh, easily. Yeah, because, like, because Dagmar released was it, like a curse or something? Or
it was like a poison that poisoned the water and stoned everyone, turned everyone into stone.
Except for Zog and Derek.
Yes! and the pig. Don't forget the pig.
Oh, yeah. Isn't the pig the prince or whatever?
Yeah, he was supposed to marry Bean in the first episode and got turned into a pig.
Yeah. Voiced by the always awesome Matt Berry.
Yes.
I just always like to shout out Matt Berry when I can. Absolutely loving him on another show, but we haven't talked about. But anyway. So much stuff happened.
Yes.
I don't know, like...
I mean, we have to spoil this part because it leads directly into part 2. With the arrival of Bean's mother comes the death of Elfo.
Yes.
And that's a big part of the first 3 episodes of this part of the season. That, to me, made it the strongest part of the entire season.
Yeah, well, one of my favorite... It also leads to one of my favorite gags.
Oh, what's wrong?
Elfo's in heaven. Tell them to go to hell.
I can't hear you. Like, every other word, I can hear you. Go to hell, Elfo. I heard that. That was very rude. Yeah, but another running gag in that part was, of course, Elfo's in heaven. And he has to go to hell for a specific reason. I won't spoil that part. But him trying to get banished out of heaven is so funny because God is so lenient on stuff you can say to him. I didn't expect that to be the case.
Yeah.
and then the reason why is even better.
There's a lot more solid gags, I think, in this part.
Yeah.
Like, the more emotional elements with Elfo and everything. Like, I didn't really like him in part 1. I'm definitely a little more invested with him in part 2.
But I think they did his character kind of some injustice in part 2, where they kind of alluded to the fact that he might have changed from just a natural, from something that's happened to him, he would change a little bit. They teased it, and then it really never came to be.
Yeah, that was pretty. Yeah. It's kind of. It reminds me a lot of that bit from the end of the Family Guy episode where he gained a lot of weight and then accidentally absorbed lost a lot of weight and then absorbed a bunch of lard to get back to his original form.
Right.
I guess you learned a very valuable lesson. Nope. End of episode. There's a whole tangent you got on about that too.
Yeah.
I'd say the comedy's a lot better this season, or this part, I should say. Again, I still have some problems investing in our protagonists.
Yeah. I mean, really, I've said it in the first season, and I'll say it in this season too, and I understand this part of the season. And I understand the idea of this girl who's trying to really find herself outside of the intended purpose of her being some kind of incredible person of royalty. I understand that she doesn't fit that mold. She's trying to find out who she really is. I get that part. But there's still like a very lack of redeeming qualities to her character that would make me say I would root for her in her journey.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it actually ties in very well to the end of the season as to why I feel this way, because they actually bring it up.
I don't know what, because I'm just thinking. Okay, I'll be honest. I kind of drifted out there because I was thinking about something I wanted to talk about from a later episode, and I'm like, oh no, that's probably a spoiler.
What episode are you talking about?
I'm trying to remember now. Okay, all right. Episode 8.
Okay.
Where like, remember the bit? Like, okay, because there's a weird sexist rule.
Right. Yeah.
And what happened? And like, Zog's genuine moment in that episode near the end, I actually quite liked.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Very much so.
Like, I'm trying to say, like, because I was trying to talk about how, like, I guess I'd had a hard time emotionally investing in the characters, but I liked how they did that moment in episode 8.
Yeah, no, that was a really solid moment because it not only that it built up off of something that had been happening to Bean pretty much since she got back to the castle, and then we had this little twist, like you said, of sexism that happens, and it opens Zog's eyes to the reality of what he's been doing because there's something that he's been trying to avoid ever since, everything happened, to the point of almost killing his daughter when she came back. Excuse me. And there's a really heartfelt moment. Like, that's one of the episodes, and I've talked about, when I talk about, like, some of the weak points of the series, especially when it comes to the narrative flow, that episode really was a weak point. And my example of what I wanted from the series is what they started with at the top of the season and what they ended with. But it was such a well done episode that it made me forget, like, hey, this is not what I was kind of looking forward to when this part of the season started. Because one thing I noted when we were talking about the first half of the season was the fact that the reviewers that got the pre-release copies of the season only got the first 7 episodes. And it's like,
which are mostly not great standalone.
Right. It's just kind of, building up the world, building up the characters a little bit, but it's not really, it's just standalone episodes. It really doesn't matter in a lot of ways the grand scheme of what they're trying to present. And then the last 3 is when we really get the serialized episodes.
Yeah, and the serialized episodes in general are a lot better.
Yeah, and that's the same thing that how this part of the season starts. So when we got to, like, episode 4, which, once again, is kind of a standalone episode, but it's done incredibly well. We start going back to that rhythm of just standalone episodes that really kind of reset everything, and the next week's another adventure kind of feeling. And then at the end of the season, of course, we get more of a little bit of a serialized feeling as well. That kind of movement, to me, hurt the overall flow. Once again, but one thing about, like, the first half of the season, of the season 1, was the fact that it kind of blended into that. We had the standalone, and then we had the serialized. This time we had the serialized, then we had standalone, then we had serialized again. And I don't know if it was one of those situations where they kind of ran out of ideas of how they wanted to serialize it or what. But they had an idea of how they wanted to end the season.
Yeah, and by the way, the last episode has some of my favorite gags as well.
Oh, very much so.
Without giving too much away, again, one of them involves Zog.
Yes.
It's partially his reactions and stuff, but it's also partially
what
happens around him.
Ooh, a fire.
Yeah. And then Elfo... It's like, Elfo, quick, fix this situation. What's that? Make it worse? Is essentially what happened. Like the best way I can describe it is at one point he's supposed to explain something to fix everything.
Yes.
And he does an amazing job of explaining it to make it worse.
And then he's completely oblivious over the fact that the more he talks, the worse it sounds.
I know, like that's like I had this problem with him in the first part. Elfo just kind of
goes into his little own tangents and just kind of like blanks out. Like he has no idea like how to filter himself sometimes.
Yeah, and like he felt like they were trying too hard to make him the annoying, hilarious sidekick. And
right.
I think he found that norm a bit better. Like it's just, I still find it really hard to be invested in our freaking protagonist.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the things. Like there was an episode where Lucy and Elfo actually have to live together, and it's a very, very minor B story. And yet, it was so hilarious in the interactions because of just how ridiculous Elfo is in the thought of how I will annoy someone that is a housemate that has insulted me. Like, that kind of stuff. Like, to me, being in a lot of ways feels like a tool to push forward a narrative instead of her being the main reason why the narrative exists a lot of times. I was more interested, especially with the last 2 episodes, not to spoil too much, with the revelations of certain things that were happening outside of Dreamland. And I wanted to see more of what happened to the other characters than I cared about what was happening to Bean. Like,
it's just, yeah.
I wanted more Derek and Power. I just wanted more of that.
That would have been good, yeah.
Oh, man.
Like, I think what I'm trying to sum up is we still have this fundamental problem, like, both listening to and getting invested in the main protagonist for some pedantic, some not so pedantic reasons. But the supporting cast in general and the general plotting, I think, improved.
Yeah.
So while I still have a hard time recommending this series, I will say it was definitely funnier than Part 1. And probably overall more enjoyable than Part 1.
It flowed, like I said, even with the breaking up of like serialized, standalone serialized. To me, I was actually more into it and actually enjoying the ride a lot more than I did the first half. Like, I kind of had to force myself to finish the first half until those last 3 episodes, and it was like, oh yeah, now I really want to watch it. Whereas with this, I was pretty good with the entire season, and second half of the season, in terms of like, oh, I want to see what happens on the next episode. And then even with the standalone, I'm thinking like, oh, it's going to go back to serialized very soon. They're doing enough to keep me hooked, and I can say that this half did a lot better than the first half in that regard.
I think that's about.
I hate to do the comparison, but it's still like the weakest of the 3. You know. I know it's terrible.
So?
I know it's terrible, but I mean, compared to like 30 plus seasons of The Simpsons and like 8 seasons of Futurama and only 1 season of this, but
yeah,
you know, starting if you had to like compare like the first season of each series, it actually may be better, which is surprising. But
it definitely has more focus on the first season of Futurama.
Yeah, oh yeah. And like I said, I think Futurama really got his footing after the first season. Same with The Simpsons, but like I said, this is definitely a lot more fleshed out when it comes to a first season than those 2 shows were. But of course, those are really 2 totally different animals too. So. Oh
yeah, like the second season of The Simpsons, the very first episode is one of the most powerful episodes in the entire run of The Simpsons.
Right.
That's the one where Bart gets an F, I believe.
Exactly.
Yeah, that is one of the most powerful moments in television history. I'm like, I wouldn't say it's the best episode of The Simpsons. I know some people argue it is.
Oh no. But it's an absolutely fantastic episode.
Yeah, like I think that's the one that really helps cement that show, I think. But speaking of things that got cemented. Let's talk about something that has well overstayed its welcome.
It's old and moldy now.
It's the old and busted, to quote Will Smith. Let's talk about Rambo Last Blood. So first of all, this film didn't need to exist. Second of all, Rambo 4 didn't need to exist. Third of all, Rambo 2 really didn't need to exist. I mean... And technically, none of the sequels should have existed.
No.
The book doesn't really leave openings for a sequel. And
no,
the book is way different than the original movie.
I was about to say that the book is a complete, you know, it's bookends. Like, seriously, like, they close it right there with the book. This is just something that gained popularity as the first one, and they were like, man, this is just too good to let go.
So, yeah, like, because, I mean, the first one is all about PTSD and trying to readjust to society. And then, like, you know what, we got to send him in as a soldier. And then they kind of still tied it into his PTSD and everything with the second one, where he felt, you know, he had all this guilt.
Right.
So that's why he did the reckless, I'm going to save these people I'm just supposed to document.
Right.
Which also, of course, came across as a stupid left-wing politicians, all they do is talk. But, I mean, there was a realistic reason for that. Because, I mean, Stallone gets a lot of criticism for going really hard gung-ho politically in some of his 80s movies, but I think there was more justifiable in that one than, like, Cobra. Hey, you want to do a Dirty Harry movie with none of the subtlety and none of the nuance? Cobra. But Oh yeah, you know what? I don't want to go on a tangent about Cobra because we're gonna talk about this movie.
Yeah.
Which I really don't like.
I thought about it when just reading the reviews and watching reviews of it. I was like, man, I actually enjoyed it a lot more than I think a lot of people did. Not necessarily because I thought it was a good Rambo movie, just because it was like, hey, this is Taken, and I'm enjoying this this Rambo version of Taken.
No, it's not just Taken. It's 3 freaking movies they ripped off. They ripped off Taken. They ripped off Skyfall.
Oh yeah.
And they ripped off Sicario, and they didn't do a really good job with the last one, because they took out all the kind of nuance in Sicario, and just kind of introduced generic cartel villain instead.
Yes.
Sicario is
generic cartel brother villains.
Oh yeah.
Can't just have one.
Yeah. I'm more than happy to spoil this entire movie because of how dumb I think it is.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I just said this is Taken. That should be a spoiler enough.
Yeah.
Like a movie that came out over a decade ago. If you have not seen that and you do not know what Taken is, especially with the commercials, you should be able to pretty much piece together exactly what happens. If you've seen Taken, you know what happens here.
And it's even worse because it's more mean-spirited than Taken. And like I said, it has the same problem Cobra does, where it lacks any of the subtlety or nuance that, say, especially Sicario.
Right.
And even Skyfall to a degree. And, actually Taken as well. No, Taken still had some subtlety and other things about it.
Yeah, like I said,
Taken had some of the same problems this movie had, but more pronounced. So more pronounced. By the way, how old is John Rambo supposed to be in this movie?
Well, I'm assuming he's in his 70s at this point.
1947, he was born.
What?
So, assuming this movie takes place in the present day,
it had
that's
to be.
a problem.
What?
Do you want me to do the math? Because doesn't that make it like 72?
Yes!
Just saying.
I said it was in his 70s, but I did not really think about it. I did not even do the math. That is crazy.
Yep. No, it's canon that John Rambo was born in 1947. I just looked that up. And Stallone himself is only 1 year old. 1 year old in that. So, man, like you thought the Expendables were like at least in the Expendables it's like, oh, he's 73, but he's playing a late 50s dude.
Right. No,
somehow still in amazing shape.
They've embraced the idea that he's aged.
Yeah. In this case, it's, and also I love how at the end, I'm gonna put out a spoiler from the end of the 4th Rambo film.
Okay.
He goes and finally reconnects with his dad. That was the emotional beat they were trying to do with 4, which still wasn't very good, but at least they tried to have an emotional beat.
Right.
This one, his dad's dead.
Yeah, we don't even see him die. It's just off camera. It's an off camera death.
He died off camera, and now meet my old friend you've never seen before and her daughter. Hey, you want to do a Taken movie?
That was one thing that I had a complete, this brain fart. I'm thinking about this thing. Have we seen these people before? I was really trying to think about this thing while I was watching it. And come to find out, like you said, no, these were completely brand new characters that we had no emotional ties to. Like I said, I wish they could have had a moment of them having, they're the father's caretaker or something, and they're all there when he dies. And then, of course, they get close because of that. If they just had that, instead of the moment of Rambo saving these people from almost a tsunami, instead of having that as the opening segment, and had this, this big emotional moment to really emphasize the fact of his closeness with these individuals that we've never seen before in a Rambo movie, I think it would have done a lot more to help the idea of, hey, you're my uncle, you're some kind of friend of mine, and I want to protect you. I think it would have done a lot better for the film in terms of getting the jump on the idea of the emotional connection between Rambo and this random girl that's about to go to college.
Yeah, remember the new guy?
Yeah.
No, sorry. That was probably funnier to me than it was to you. So as a result, we get a movie that has pretty decent action, but the core premise is, 1, not terribly well fleshed out.
No.
2, pretty ridiculous. 3, again, lacking, to be to not, again, go overly political, I will say it lacks a lot of nuance and subtlety.
Yes.
Which makes it problematic, to put it lightly. Just like any time, we're not just talking about in this year 2019. I mean, basically any time this would have been problematic. Even in the 80s, this would have been problematic.
I would disagree on the pure unadulterated fact that in the 80s we would not have chulo girls walking around like it's still 1995.
That's true.
Because that was ridiculous. I actually rolled my eyes when I saw that one.
Yeah.
In 2019, somebody's still dressed. No, stop it. Somebody just like has that stuck image of a Mexican woman that isn't an older woman like we had the one. Like every teenage Mexican woman dresses like this.
I know. Like that's just.
That was so bad.
It's like if Creed was, the ingenious way to keep this decrepit franchise going. This is like where all Stallone's bad ideas go. It's like he's got to have an outlet for the bad ones too. I don't know what else to say. Like the action's fine.
Yeah, no,
but...
I actually had a big problem with one scene, the action scene. I will spoil this when he starts going on the hunt, and this is like midway through the movie, and
of course he goes on the hunt.
Yeah, of course. And there's a fight scene where he gets the crap beaten out of him. And reasonably so. Like, I'm perfectly fine with that. It makes sense. Especially the numbers, situation, and everything else. But I was kind of hoping, because he, took one guy down and rolled him over. He was beating him up a little bit before they got a hold of him and really roll him out. I was hoping that they would, maybe even stand him up, have, a one-on-one, really showcase his skills a little bit before he got beat down. And we were, really had a nice little fight, hand-to-hand fight scene. We did not have that here. And I really wish they could have, because they had the opportunity to do so, but they just didn't do it.
They should have at least made him take off his belt.
Right!
I mean, for God's sakes, the Punisher does it.
The Punisher
and
does
it amazingly well.
Yeah.
Come on, Rambo, take off your belt.
But of course, and here's, I'll spoil this right now because it really doesn't matter. Because if you watch the trailer, you've already seen it. Pretty much a lot of the action scenes that were shown in the trailers were the last 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the action scenes, outside of the stuff that you couldn't, of course, get away with from some deaths, was a part of the last 20 minutes, the big confrontation, the last third act, which, hands down, was the best part of the movie. But, once again, it was almost like a Jigsaw from Saw situation where I don't know, as good as Rambo is, some of the stuff he came up with, I don't know how he came up with some of those traps.
I know, even if you factor in he's a non-veteran, who of course saw a lot of improvised weaponry like the Viet Cong had and everything.
Right.
Like, even then it feels like a stretch, which is really saying something.
He turned the guy's face into a stair step.
Yeah. I still don't fully understand the logistics of that.
That's what I'm saying!
I don't know if there's much else to say about this movie. I kind of want to just wrap up and talk about something fun.
Okay.
Because,
no, but
I really don't recommend this. Like I said, even without the political problems I have with this movie, which, like I said, are kind of a problem with these types of action movies these days. Because we think about the nature of the bad guy more, and when the nature of the bad guy is really just it's not good.
Yeah.
But even beyond that, it's not a very good plot. It's very unrealistic that Rambo would be able to do half the stuff he does in this.
Yeah, very much so.
And there's zero investment in anything. It's like...
No. It's taken. I'm telling you, it's taken. And, like I said,
and Skyfall.
And Skyfall. And Sicario. All blended into one starring Rambo. And like I said, it's a Rambo film. It's pretty bad.
Absolutely.
As a just a schlock action film that if you go in, want to throw popcorn at the screen and don't really care about any kind of emotional investment, it's like you just are looking forward to seeing Rambo kill guys. Okay, maybe wait for DVD or like Redbox to rent it.
So just watch Part 3 again.
That's true.
Part 3 at least had some awesome, and at least that stuff was practical effects.
That's true.
There were not enough practical effects in this movie.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, no, not at all.
And it only had a $50 million budget, so I'm like, no, absolutely, just go. Like even Rambo Part 4 had some really awesome action sequences.
Yeah.
and that one was a real waste of time.
I'm trying to give you credit, Sly. I really am. I'm trying to help you out, brother. But it was a rough one. It's a hard recommendation with this.
Look, he gave Dolph Lundgren one of the best roles of his career. We will forgive him. But on that note, before we wrap up, I actually do want to tell a quick story from Japan.
Okay.
So, I think I told you about the robot restaurant before, right?
Yes,
Jim?
you did. Yeah.
All right. So I don't think I ever told this on the air, though, as it were. So I think I want to recap the nature of the robot restaurant for the audience. So, the robot restaurant is a place in Kabukicho, which is a part of Shinjuku, coincidentally where the Yakuza games are typically set.
Right.
So that's cool. And what it is it's about 8,000 yen, about $80, American, give or take. Although there's plenty of ways to get discounts, which is nice. And it's a 4-act event. Now, Act 1... Oh, it's called the Robot Restaurant, by the way. It's really more of a stage play that just happens to serve food, and the food they serve is more like what you'd expect to find at like a circus, or maybe a really fancy movie theater. So, like, it's not exactly high fare. They just call it a restaurant because then they have an easier time getting a liquor license.
Okay.
And I know that's kind of their focus, and even then the alcohol we had there, it must be said, was apparently not that impressive for what my friend told me. Like, it was a 1,000 yen vodka bubble tea, which apparently sucked. So, anyway, so Act 1 is a spiritual segment where 2 floats, like robotic floats, covered in taiko drummers, essentially have a drum circle battle, but they're on floats. And then there's other drummers on the ground as well. And it's all done with like a Japanese spiritualism thing. There's like a big demon, and there's like a goddess, and there's a torii gates and everything. And then after that, we see 2 robot samurai battle. And then they get tired of battling. So they pull out calligraphy brushes. And then they spell out on a video screen a number. And that number is the lucky seat number. So the person in that seat gets a free popcorn. And that's the end of Act 1. Right? Act 2 is every Power Rangers series ever. As the machines lead an uprising, and they do have like some Terminator-like images as well. So, but luckily the last of humanity have the forces of nature they can call upon. So soon we have Power Rangers type ridiculous robot battles where like giant mechanized snakes and I'm trying to think what else, beetles and moths. There's a Mothra cameo show up to battle these robots in just like goofy over the top Power Rangers fashion. And it culminates with a dragon battling what I can only describe as the Queen of the Machines with her twin pylons of power, which are not like pylons she wears over her boobs, but like somewhere between her boobs and her belly button. Like I keep looking at the costume, like, why are the pylons there? It's like if it's they're actually on the boobs, it's too sexually suggestive, but they need it there somewhere. It was weird. That's Act 2. And then Act 3, they pull out lasers, and they're all in black, and they've got light-up costumes, and they're just doing like a trippy laser show, including a guy riding around on a laser motorcycle. Which sounds like a fever dream. And then finally in Act 4, they start doing a parade of all nations while singing We Are the World. And they have people dressed up as like Mr. America. Not Uncle Sam or anything like that, but Mr. America, Mr. Canada, Mr. Britain. And they just parade out like a weird double-decker bus float. They parade out like some weird chicken creature. There's also like a shark thing that looks like, but it's got the road rocker from Mad Max who's getting dangled upside down over a shark while they're playing the guitar as Black or White plays. Like, I'm describing these in about as much detail as I can.
Right.
And like, it is.
It still sounds like an acid trip.
Yeah, it's totally an acid trip, and it's an absolute treat to see in person. Like, it was absolutely one of the highlights of the trip. So I do recommend. So if you were ever in Shinjuku in Tokyo and you happen to be able to get to Kabukicho in time, check out the Robot Restaurant.
Wow.
Just, the food doesn't seem terribly impressive. Luckily, Kabukicho's got a lot of restaurants. as well as a lot of places that will let you see actual nudity later if you want.
Ah.
That's where a Nigerian man asked me to if I liked them titties. I think he was Nigerian. He might have been something else.
Right.
African something.
It doesn't matter where he was from. You know what he was offering.
He might have been Ghanaian, honestly.
Oh man, Japan, you are a wonderful, wonderful place.
Yep. And so, thank you for being with me through my
Your odyssey.
recovery from. Yes. Yeah. Thanks for being here as always, James.
Oh yeah, it's always a pleasure. You know that.
Yep. And until. Oh, I just want to remind people now that Extra Life is also coming up.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So please be sure to support your local Extra Lifer, be it me. That would be cool.
Mm-hmm.
I do have an Extra Life page, which I'll probably start including in stuff. Or if you want to support someone else, look up your local children's hospital or Miracle Network hospital. Odds are there'll be someone out there you can help, and you can help support them by watching their stream and donating money.
That's awesome.
It's hashtag for the kids.
Yeah. Extra Life for the kids.
Yep. All right. Until next time, folks.